and Eric Sheethaber. We're going to talk a little bit about this 8-game MLB slate. We're going to start off though, just talk about last night. I did not do well in MLB. I was just on basically the borderlines of all the cashing on all the big ones. So that was a little frustrating for me. But Sheets, you got frustrated. You had a little bit of a frustration one. Talk a little bit about it.
No, just after the fact. So first of all, just again, not to brag, but more to to encourage. Okay, for those of you that were not there, this was built literally live on the stream. Okay.
Oh my God! Literally, what?
Yeah,
I thought it was the $15 you were talking about. I didn't realize it was
No.
Oh,
this was built literally live on the stream, showing the different settings I used, and I didn't make a single change after I uploaded it. And this is what we ended up with. We ended up with, and remember we talked about how even when you applied the contest sims, I was getting more Dodgers than Seattle, which I was kind of happy about. So I ended up with three St. Louis guys. I mean, 4 St. Louis guys who combined for like nothing. Okay, like Carlson had a 0, had a couple with whatever, but it was turning into a pretty sheet slate because nobody was scoring anything like the whole night. Okay. And then I'm like, you know what? I got some Dodgers. And then the Dodgers went on the freaking home run parade. It had Ohtani, Freeman back-to-back in the first inning. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to have to watch some baseball. And then just every single, and then Outman with the home run also. Okay. But then actually I had Outman in FanDuel. I didn't have Outman in this one. And then they came up again, the 7th and the 8th, and then they just killed the ball. But the Dodger Stadium mystique just garnered the gravity and just pulled it down to the dugout. To the warning track. I don't know if I would have actually gotten the win without both the guys getting the home run between Betts and Freeman. But it was, listen, I wasn't frustrated. I was happy that I went from my dead last going into this late game all the way up to 5th. Okay, so. So that worked out really, really well. Very happy to have cashed what I cashed for. And again, I encourage all of you to not only just show up at 6 o'clock to watch if I'm around and do my process, but more to the point, do it for yourself, and experiment yourself. It's kind of weird as a content provider to say it this way, but if I'm doing it the right way, as far as showing you my process, I'm doing it in a way that you don't have to come back every time to watch it again. You know what I mean? So hopefully you guys are learning from this, and I imagine a lot of you are improving off of this. But I went through how to use the contest sims, how to use the projections, and it is nice to see it actually, perform well as well. Mm-hmm. I know it's process over results, but results are always kind of nice to see also. So
yeah. Nice. That's a nice night. It's just what a brutal. It is kind of also brutal the fact that you're tied for 4th actually, even though it says 5th. You're tied
sort of. None of these guys had my same lineup.
That's so weird, but at the same time, it's still just so what a crazy pay difference between that and 1st for a few points. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Well, you're handling it a lot better than I do. Those are my least favorite nights. Are those where it was I felt like it was going to happen and it just didn't go there.
No, I needed it perfect. You know what I mean? Because when I was looking at who was in 1st, I needed both Freeman and Betts to do something. Because one guy would have Freeman, another guy would have Betts or whatever it is. So I needed them both to happen. But I talked myself into the narrative that was going to. That's the
It certainly looked like it was going to if you were watching the game. Anyway. Too bad. Well, we're on to today. Hopefully, we can move you up a few spots, I guess.
Hey, I'm happy. Listen, I'm happy. I'm happy to have been competitive.
It's much better attitude than I have. All right. Well, we're going to start off with your Yankees in Houston. What do you got here?
Speaking of which, tomorrow I will be going to Yankees against Houston. So I'm looking forward to that. But tonight, okay. Louis Gill, I have him as a very secondary option here. I have 2 pitchers that I have ahead of everybody else, and then I have kind of a 1, 2, 3 kind of then a third by himself, then kind of like a 3-way tie for that next tier. And Gill I have is that next tier. It is really hot here. I don't know how hot it's going to be at game time, but until then, it's 80 degrees here in New York. I thought I would let you guys know that. Mm-hmm. On the other side, I don't really like Verlander right now. And as far as the hitting goes, not really getting to much of anything on DraftKings. I will say on FanDuel, Houston looks like they're playable. I don't know if I'm going to do it though. But aside from that, Gil has a secondary pitching option. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I have Gil as a secondary pitching option, and that's about it. The only thing is like I'm not at the point with Verlander where I'm not like willing to take a hitter against. Like it's just not. I'm not going to stack, and I don't really want to stack against Gil, so I'm not really going to get to any of the hitting. And even though it's a nice hitting weather, as you mentioned, 74 degrees, supposedly at game time, and yeah, these guys both are. I mean, I can't quite get to Verlander. I guess on FanDuel you can make an argument for him because there are strikeouts in the Yankees lineup. He's tends to go deep into games. I don't know. I just don't love anything really in this game. Gil would be I guess kind of interesting, but I just want to point out, as much as I talk shit about Houston, and rightfully so, they've been just a horrible baseball team this season. They still have the fewest strikeouts in baseball against right-handed pitching, and I don't think I really want to gamble. Although Gil is a good enough strikeout pitcher to where he can create some. It doesn't feel like the optimal time to use any of these guys to me. All right, Boston, Atlanta.
Yeah, so you have Crawford and Lopez. I don't have any interest in Crawford today. As far as Lopez goes, I have him in that kind of like third tier alongside with Gil and somebody else. Now, again, I don't do things the way that a lot of people do them. Like I'll like lump like three guys together, and I say I like them equally, even though like one might be like 3,000 more than somebody else.
Right.
I still kind of look at it by tiers, so that's just the way it is. So I do have Lopez as part of the Gil tier as far as how much I like them given their price. So I guess he's in play. As far as hitting goes, yes. I mean, Atlanta is always in play if you can get to them. I have them rated pretty high as far as just like raw, fantasy points. Not so high as far as value goes, which means they're probably pretty expensive as usual. And that opinion goes for both DraftKings and FanDuel.
Yeah, it's a really good hitting weather in Atlanta today. It looks like it's going to be hard to tell. I guess the wind's kind of like a crosswind right now, but it's 84 degrees. Atlanta's already a great hitter spot. Cutter Crawford's a good pitcher, and Atlanta hasn't seen him before for what it's worth. So maybe you could say like, okay, well, that's a good reason not to play them. But you give me, it's the same thing I always say. A low-ish owned Atlanta team is always going to be somewhat appealing to me. Now, they haven't been as great this year, but I still think that it's a good enough spot where I'm definitely willing to take them. And I think I have Lopez sort of like you, a little bit in the same tier as Gil, but I'm almost like questioning whether I won't even want to have him in my pool at all. So pretty much just the Atlanta bats for me in this game. And honestly, to some extent, I guess I think that you can make an argument for a contrarian Boston side of things. It's not the most fun lineup in the world to stack. There's some cheap pieces though. I could talk myself into a little bit of a Boston thing too. So this whole game for hitting seems somewhat appealing to me.
What's the weather in Chicago?
We got the wind blowing out, and it's 73 degrees, 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to center.
All right. Well, that's good enough for me. I'll take the Cubs. They currently rate us like decent values on both DraftKings and FanDuel. I'm even without even thinking about the weather. I'm sure that the projections taking that into account to some degree, but I don't know about this Vasquez or whatever. But I definitely think the Cubs are a good spot with the wind, and with because of that, I'm probably not going to get to either pitcher here, Imanaga nor Vasquez.
Yeah, I actually still think you could like the fact that you're going to get the low ownership. I think today on Imanaga is just at least somewhat interesting. As a guy to potentially use. I do like the Cubs as well, and the only thing I'd say is that okay, I'm not going to probably use Randy Vasquez, but if the wind was blowing the other direction, I would have all the Randy Vasquez at 5.5. It's just a cheap enough price tag for a Cubs offense that really is, again, it's an offense that I believe in, but it doesn't have like, you're missing pieces here. So this is not, and so far this year against right-handed pitching, basically been a slightly above average offense, just because they haven't had everybody. But you blow the wind out. I think the Cubs have to be, fairly high on my list today. And Imanaga is my contrarian take of guys I'm probably going to try and use a little bit of.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just to highlight, the lefties here, Michael Bush are at 4,100, Tauchman at 3,900. These guys are all really cheap, actually. Swanson, even though he's a righty, 3,800. I mean, everybody's pretty I would say underpriced, but everybody's very, very affordable. Let's put it that way.
They really are, and it's partly because of these recent struggles of theirs. All right, we can move on to Milwaukee, KC.
Yes. So Reagan's gave up a home run yesterday, but aside from that, the guy's freaking insane. So Lugo still, he's still very, very solid. I have him as the third part of that Gil Lopez tier for me. He's actually getting a lot more ownership than those other two, at least early. So I figured I would throw that in. I see him like between 20 and 25% owned. And I guess it makes sense. I mean, he's cheap against the offense that nobody really worries about too much. So listen, I do like him. I have other spots I like a little bit better. As far as the hitting goes, well, first of all, I didn't like Colin Ray. And I do think that Kansas City on both DraftKings and FanDuel are, this is like a broken record, but I think Kansas City are pretty good values here. I don't know what the weather is like in Kansas City. Again, it has a reputation for being kind of a pitcher's park, but there was a time during the season where the wind was like kind of taking over there. So just have to continue to stay on top of that. But I do think the Kansas City pieces are still pretty good here.
Yeah, nice hitting day in Kansas City for what it's worth. 73 degrees, 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing out. Looks pretty solid. Yeah, it's an interesting lineup because I was looking at it last night and thinking they'd be popular, and they were. But it's interesting how they're played. Like Bobby Witt was like the highest owned player on the slate, like 30%. Salvador Perez was like 28% or something like that. But you have like Garcia. No one ever wants to play him for some reason. He's like 5% leading off. I'm trying to figure out how is this working? Like
because every time I play him, he strikes out 4 times, and I think everybody's onto that.
Anyway, yeah, it's weird. Like I just thought it was kind of interesting. Anyway, Lugo has been way too good for me to ignore. Like, and the matchup, St. Louis, 6th most strikeouts in baseball against right-handed pitching. At the same time, I definitely like both offenses a little bit. I just think a contrarian Milwaukee offense when no one's going to play them, and you're going to have this Tyler Black at 2,900 probably batting 3rd or 4th. Adames is cheap enough. Your boy Turang is getting moved up in the order because he's just too good not to.
Wow, finally some respect.
Yeah, but I kind of like both sides of the offenses here. So I'm going to have to figure out what I do later with this because I like Lugo. I just can't ignore that he must – I mean, he's made some changes or something, and he's just been really solid. I still feel like I'm still interested in both sides of the bat. So Milwaukee, the super contrarian one. Kansas City, the team that always gets owned far more than they're projected. So both of them definitely appealing today, even though I don't think it's like a must play or anything. I think the over in this game is a fairly good bet.
So the baseball gods are very fickle beasts. So rewinding back to yesterday, when I was going through all my builds and I was saying, oh my God, I'm getting 100% Seattle, 100% Seattle. I have to do the contest sims to not get 100% Seattle here. I'm still getting like 40% Seattle after I get through all this. And I wonder why this is. And you just said, dude, don't even worry about it. It's a freaking terrible weather. They're chalky. Just forget it. And they did nothing. Okay. They basically did nothing. And so today they're against Bailey Ober, who is going to be really, really chalky. And I have him as like one of my top 2 pitchers. Wouldn't this be like the perfect day for Seattle to just freaking go off? That's the way baseball operates. But in the absence of that, I do have Bailey Ober as one of my top 2 pitchers on the slate. You like to take righties against Seattle in general. They'd like to strike out a lot. If the weather is the way it's been in Minnesota, we'll just continue to keep doing this, or to keep analyzing it this way. So I like Ober quite a bit, and everything else in this game. I didn't really think about playing Hancock, but you could talk me into that if you feel like it. But for me, it's just Ober, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, Ober is I think the obvious guy who's going to be probably a little more popular than even the projections have him. I just think that the matchup is, you have the highest strikeout team against, and he's coming off of a rough or whatever, not a great outing. I'm happy to play Ober here, even as chalk. I do understand what you're saying, and I'm not like against the Seattle thing. I don't think I'm going to get there with the.
I'm not doing it either.
The wind is blowing out 10 miles an hour for what it's worth. It's still nice at 65 degrees, just throwing it out there. I think Hancock is in play. I don't know why we have to. The projection seems a little low. It's not the most exciting guy. Usually, you just put any of the pitchers from Seattle because they're all so good. For the most part, they're all pretty good. And he's had some tough matchups. He had Atlanta and Arizona recently. We haven't really seen like a cake matchup for him basically all season, and Minnesota's lineup is certainly nothing I'm afraid of. It feels like probably the wrong slate because there's other cheap pitchers, but just at a raw, like on its face, I think it's a fine play, the Hancock thing. I just don't think that it's probably not the right slate for it. I guess that's the best way to put it because there's other cheap guys. All right, Mets in St. Louis.
Yep. So neither of these guys are making it into my main pieces. But again, I imagine that people are going to start talking about Budo again. They did last time. I guess he's fine, but I'm not getting there. And then if you want, I never have to talk you into playing this guy. When the slate calls for it. I mean, Mikolas at he's 6,000. He's 6,000 and under 10% ownership on a slate where maybe you might want to play some bats. So he's like, in fairness, he's rated below like all the guys I mentioned so far, but he's the next one, if that helps. So Mikolas at 6K, I think that he's definitely playable. And I'm not getting to much anything as far as the hitting goes.
Yeah, for what it's worth, very nice hitting day in St. Louis, 78 degrees, winds blowing out 8 miles an hour. For St. Louis, this is pretty damn good this time of year. I think both pitchers. I'm kind of surprised Budo's not getting more ownership. I felt like it was a mistake when I first looked. I thought he'd project a little bit better than he does. Just kind of surprised because it's St. Louis and they haven't exactly been like the team to fear. I don't know. This almost feels like a little bit of a four-pronger for me. I could see both pitchers and I could see both offenses making sense, which means I probably end up not doing a lot here, but I'm not going to mind depending on what kind of lineup the Cardinals roll out. They're going to have some cheap pieces. It's just going to be that way for a while because they've got a bunch of guys who have been terrible and they've been platooning. So they're going to have cheap pieces that you can use as fillers. The Mets lineup is nothing that I'm overly excited about in general. Mikolas has been, I don't want to say boom or bust. Boom hasn't really boomed, but he's been medium or bust. And he's and both pitchers are on my list as sort of like fringy plays. So I think everything is okay and nothing that's a priority for me here is the best way I can put it.
So it's funny when I first ran the the projections for today, I saw like which stack was rated high and whatever. I didn't even see like what the matchups were, who was playing. And when I saw that, and I like thinking about it this way. So when I saw that San Francisco was rated like near the top in both, raw points and value, whatever, I always think that there's three ways that can be. Like 75 to 80% of the time, it's because they're in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the other 10% is like when they're playing like against Josiah Gray or like Patrick Corbin or whatever, Right. So I was just waiting to see, like, as I scroll through this, and when I see that San Francisco is Colorado, obviously it makes sense. So San Francisco, again, similar as almost always, road team in Colorado. They're going to project really well. They're pretty good values and good raw points as well, and they're probably going to be really popular. So you have to decide what you want to do there. The interesting dynamic about this year, which I really think it's a new thing for this year. It used to be that it didn't matter how bad Colorado was.
Right.
Like pitchers that went in there would always project for 9 points, and nobody would play them. And this year, like everybody that's decent that's going into Colorado projects through the roof and is like the most popular guy on the slate. Now, I don't mean the most popular, but they're getting a lot more respect this year. Like remember when Cease went in there, he was the big chalk. Other guys went in there, and now I'm seeing Kyle Harrison, going in there at 30% ownership. I do have him as that clear number 3 guy, and at 6,400, given the fact that he's a decent pitcher and Colorado's awful, I can see why. I just can't get used to yet this idea that these road pitchers in Colorado are taking so much ownership. I guess that is a testament to how poor the Colorado bats are. But it is a little scary to me. So I'm gonna sort of probably let the Sims kind of help me with this. Like I'm not gonna play Harrison on purpose in my big buy-in, but if they really want me to play him, I guess I might. I really would rather not, if you want to know the truth. And as far as the hitting goes, same thing goes with the San Francisco side of this. You factor in both that they're not that great for openers. Number 2, they're going to be chalky, and number 3, and you could talk more about this. They at least have a reputation for doing some funny business with their lineups. That I think combining all those things makes me want to get under on San Francisco.
Yeah, I definitely understand. For what it's worth, I was just praying when I looked at this slate that Kyle Harrison was going to be like super low owned, and I knew it wouldn't happen. But I don't think there's anything wrong with playing Kyle Harrison. It's 6,400 is I mean, he's got like one of the highest K props on the slate. 6,400. They dropped his price. They gave him the Colorado bump down, and they keep doing that to the pitchers, and that's partly why we keep playing them, or why they keep, the Sims and everything, or sorry, the projection systems keep wanting you to play them. I like Harrison as a pitcher, especially, this is a weak offense that he's facing. I also think that, it's Colorado, and the Giants are going to be mega chalk. If anything, I don't mind using them as fillers. There's a lot of things to worry about the Giants just in general, like the platooning is a thing that you could use as a justification why not to play certain guys. I just think that they might end up lower owned today than the projections. Like SaberSim things seem to think everybody's going to play them. I think they're going to be really popular on FanDuel. I'm not 100% sure that everybody's playing them on DraftKings. I think people are a little down on their offense, and they're expensive for an offense that really hasn't been anything to write home about. So I do like San Francisco. They're right near the top for me, but again, it's really going to depend on what I feel the ownership's going to be before it locks, and whether I don't want to necessarily do a 5-man, but again, using like a little 3-man stack or a 4-4 on FanDuel, I'm totally open to doing that. I do want to point out though, again, that they will be really popular on FanDuel because of the way the pricing works. I think that the interesting thing is the completely unowned Colorado side, as always. Even though I have interest in Harrison, you're going to give, basically these teams have a 1 run separating them, and Colorado's got the 6th or like the 4th or 5th highest run total on the slate, and they're going to be like the 11th owned offense. I just think overall the right thing to do is be overweight on that. Now, I'm not playing a guy who plays 150 every day, but that is what I consider. And I'm considering, instead of doing all my other stuff, maybe playing the mini max today, just having some fun with some projection stuff, and really playing the $3 and just get some more exposure that way. Because I have a lot of takes that I want to do things, but when you only play like 4 or 5 lineups, it's hard to really capitalize on some of those takes, or at least give yourself a chance. So again, I like Harrison, the Giants as a more of a complimentary stack, and I think Colorado as a low-owned stack is totally reasonable.
So I would like to say that I was very glad that I did not force in that Miami pitcher last night, as I was threatening to do. I ended up just being able to do okay just playing the stupid Dodgers. I say the stupid Dodgers, whatever it is. It helped that it was a low-scoring slate in general.
Yeah.
That if you just had like the raw points from the Reagans, Heaney, or Castillo, even then you just needed to score a little bit as far as your hitting goes. So the Dodger home run variance was more than enough. So today, no different. Well, it's different because it's a different context of the slate, right? So I think you might be right with respect to the San Francisco ownership, meaning that I think the Dodgers are going to be more popular than San Francisco. I just think they're just playing really elite right now, at least they're going to be as owned, I think, as the Giants. So that's something to consider. But with that said, I mean, they are the top overall raw points play on the slate, both DraftKings and FanDuel. In addition to that, my top overall pitcher on the slate is Yamamoto. So I have it rated Yamamoto and Ober like just basically tied, and so I imagine that some Yamamoto Ober pairing is going to be the chalky pairing, and I guess you could. I wonder how many Dodgers you could really play with that with the 10-1, 7-6. I don't know. But I definitely do like the Dodgers here. I just have to think about it again, just because just because the Dodgers can be popular, about what to do with maybe playing Edward Cabrera. So I got to tell you, man, not a good look home against Colorado. Only make it through 4 innings with 4 earned runs and 4.
But he did have 9 strikeouts in the
He did have 9 strikeouts. Not a good look against Washington, not getting through the 5th inning, giving up 5 earned runs. So I will say this: if you play him, you're going to be all by yourself, which is I guess good. But like you said yesterday, I mean, the Dodgers just do not strike out. they just don't. So I don't know if I could do it. I will say this, that if the Sims and I just force me into like a certain percentage of him in the mini max, I'm not gonna bitch about it, but I'm certainly not gonna force him in just for spite like I was considering doing yesterday. So for me, Dodgers, Yamamoto, and try to get different somewhere else, I think.
Yeah, I just a couple quick things that I wanted to point out. The Dodgers actually do have strikeouts in their lineup. They're going to strike out against some pitching. Like that's the weird part is that they had the game with the no strikeouts or whatever, but they actually do have some strikeouts in there. They've got a high strikeout rate. I mean, 20 like for example, Miami versus the Dodgers. Miami strikes out they strike out 22%. The Dodgers strike out 25% against. It's a pretty high percentage. Because some of the things they've added and some of the bottom of their lineup. But I get that. I actually don't think I certainly wouldn't cross Cabrera out of especially because if he's got incredible strikeout stuff. I wouldn't cross him out if I was playing 150. I certainly wouldn't play him. I don't think I'm playing 3 lineups. I love Yamamoto. Probably a little bit expensive. Not even expensive. It's not like it's unfair for him. It's just. It's not like we have the major leash, or maybe he doesn't quite have the ultimate ceiling you want for a guy this price, but he's just so hard to hit. And again, it's Miami may not be a great offense. They still don't, like I said, they don't strike out a ton, and but they also don't. They no longer have Luis Arias, who was leading off for them, who was the lowest strikeout guy in all of baseball, actually in recent baseball history. And now there's more strikeouts in the lineup because he's gone. So I do like Yamamoto as the guy to spend up for. I'll sort of wrap it up with my thoughts for the Dodgers is yes, every day should have exposure, especially against volatile pitchers, even if they're good volatile pitchers. Like I believe in Cabrera's talent, but he can walk 4 guys, and if you walk 4 guys in 4 innings against this Dodgers, somebody's going to make you pay somewhere along the way. I don't see them. It's interesting because I think SaberSim is way off on their projections of ownership. They've got 0 ownership on the Dodgers projected. I think it's going to be somewhere just around 10-ish%, maybe a little. It's maybe Ohtani gets to 15.
Well, who's going to be higher owned as a team than them besides San Francisco?
So, that's what I was going to say is I don't think that there's anybody necessarily that's going to be. So I've got San Francisco. I think the Cubs. San Francisco, I don't know. You're right. I guess it's going to be a little bit of a mix and match. I think the Cubs will end up more popular than they're projected right now.
No, you could be right about that. I'm looking at this.
And I don't know. It feels a little depends on what kind of lineup the Cardinals release, because they have some really cheap pieces. So that'll have something to do with it, and sort of how
Kansas City, maybe
Kansas City, Atlanta will have some ownership, but I think it's going to be a little bit spread out outside of San Francisco. And I think that like bets, and even if people aren't playing the Dodgers, I think you're going to see people playing just Betts or Ohtani most days now. That'll be like the one-off they go for, just because Ohtani's running again. Like,
I want to talk about that for a second. So just as far as the way people keep stats and whatever it is, I have an issue with this. So I had Ohtani, so I was sweating him last night. Like both of his stolen bases were like runners on first and third where they didn't even throw down. You know what I mean? So not that it shouldn't count, but I definitely don't think it should count as much. But I don't know. That's
well, he's gone every time he's had a chance. He's stolen a base every single time he's had a chance, except for one over his last So he stole 4 of his last 5. Then when he had chances, now the problem was he was hitting home runs and doubles every other time. You know what I mean? So, but like at first base with second base open, especially when he walks, that's when he tends to go. Like he doesn't like being walked. If you're going to do that, so he'll just take off on that. But I just think that they were careful at first with him. And then they're just like, okay, when Mookie started running, he started running every time.
Yep.
So the Dodgers, that's why every day the Dodgers seem to have somebody with 30. So, the pitchers for me, Yamamoto, Ober, Lugo, Harrison as my top ones.
Yep.
Fringy, Nicolas, Hancock to spend down. Imanaga is the contrarian spend up. And Budo is the contrarian mid-range guy. Cubs, both sides of the Colorado game, both sides of the Kansas City game, Dodgers and Atlanta, and I'm just sorting out which ones I'm going to have in what order, and I'll have more on that when we talk at 6 Eastern.
Cubs, Kansas City, and I'd love to play the Dodgers. I'm like, why can't I just play why can't I just not play Yamamoto? Why can't I play like Uber and Lugo, and then
no problem with that.
Or even Uber and Ober and Harrison, or some combination of that.
Yeah, I have no issue with that.
Dodgers if you want, but Cubs, KC would be kind of like the hipster plays of the day, I guess. But though I do like them, and Gil could be, take advantage of what, like you said, is like what you said like 2 months ago. Is just might be a washed Houston team. It's like hard. It's kind of scary to say, right? I mean, but they just don't do anything.
Yeah, they don't. They actually, the only thing they don't do is they don't strike out. That's the only problem taking pictures against them for me. But they
get up to the plate and the announcers spend like 4 hours talking about all the accolades of these guys that have how great they are, and then next thing you know, they're like in the dugout. It's like
down to nothing. I mean, they better be careful. The White Sox are catching them. They're going to catch. The White Sox might catch them soon and win.
That'd be awesome.
It's hilarious because
Nah, you'll see. Houston it'll be revealed that they were doing it on purpose to get like some sneaky draft pick or something like that. It's like, who knows?
I mean, it's pretty wild. That whole division. Talk about underachieving. It's been bizarre. But all right. So just real quick, Sheets. Do you want to do a really quick basketball first look? Just talk about the games.
Yeah, we could. You want to just do it in like 5 minutes or something?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Good luck.